7 signs ye radiate the break-heal vibration that demons fear and respect. There's something rare, ancient, and unmistakable about people who walk into a room and, without saying a word, shift the entire atmosphere. You've seen it. Maybe you've been it. Their presence doesn't ask for attention, it commands it. Not through ego, not through force, but through a quiet intensity that says, "I've walked through hell and came back with keys." These are not ordinary people. They radiate what I call the break-heal vibration, a frequency so potent, so purified through pain and transformation that even dark forces pause in its presence, not because they're afraid of the person, but because they're afraid of what that presence activates. It breaks illusions, it heals timelines, it confronts everything false in its path. And when that vibration walks into a room, demons don't attack, they take a step back and they watch. Because what they're looking at is a soul that can no longer be manipulated, fed on, or controlled. But how do you know if you carry that vibration? How do you know if you're one of the rare ones who not only survived the fire, but became it? That's what this video is about. Not just to entertain you, not just to wow you, but to remind you, because if you're watching this, chances are you already carry it. Maybe you've felt torn. Maybe you've doubted yourself. Maybe you've wondered why people project darkness onto you, even when your heart is pure. Maybe you've asked, why do I trigger people just by existing? That's because your energy isn't neutral. It's catalytic. It does something to the space. And the reason you felt so misunderstood, rejected, or even attacked at times, especially when you're just being yourself, is because your vibration is designed to break what isn't real and heal what's ready. And that's not a comfortable frequency. That's not a people-pleasing frequency. That's a soul-activating, system-disrupting, shadow-exposing, truth-telling frequency. And the first sign that you radiate this break-heal vibration is this. You've been through something you weren't supposed to survive, but you did. And you didn't come back empty-handed. You came back with insight, with empathy, with X-ray vision. You don't just see people, you see through them. You feel what they don't say. You can walk into a room and instantly detect what's real and what's performative. And it's not because you're paranoid, it's because your nervous system has been rewired by pain to perceive deeper layers of reality. That's what happens when you've had to fight for your own soul. You don't come back the same, you come back tuned. And that tuning becomes a threat to anyone or anything that's still operating in distortion.
Click subscribe to this channel to get more profound spiritual lesson.
You ever notice how people either open up to you instantly or get incredibly uncomfortable around you? That's not a coincidence, that's resonance. The second sign of this vibration is that you carry a frequency of remembrance, and that frequency activates people's inner truth. Sometimes that shows up as intimacy. They feel safe with you, they confess things they haven't told anyone in years. Other times it shows up as resistance, they get defensive, irritated, even hostile. Not because you're doing anything wrong, but because your energy is acting like a mirror, and mirrors don't lie. They reflect. And people with unhealed darkness don't always want to see themselves clearly, especially not in someone who's already done the work they've avoided. The third sign is that you've had to walk alone. Not just physically, but spiritually. You've had to find your own answers, often without support, recognition, or validation. You've had your dark nights. You've stared into the abyss and realized no one was coming to save you. And in that moment, when you chose not to collapse but to awaken, something shifted. You stopped trying to be understood and you started becoming undeniable. You stopped waiting to be rescued and you started embodying the energy you once begged the universe to send you. That's when the vibration began to emanate. That's when you stopped being food for darkness and started being a force that darkness had to reckon with. But let's make this clear. We're not talking about egoic power. We're not talking about looking spiritual, sounding enlightened, or collecting followers. We're talking about raw, lived through it, earned energy. the kind you get only by breaking and then healing again and again until there's nothing left to prove, nothing left to perform, and nothing left to protect. The fourth sign is that your authenticity is unshakable. You don't shrink around power, you are the power. You don't chase approval, you embody presence. And when you speak, whether it's soft or loud, people feel it. Because it's not just words, it's frequency, and frequency doesn't lie. Now, ask yourself this. When was the last time you walked away from a conversation and knew deep down that your truth disturbed something in them? Not because you were aggressive, not because you were trying to convince anyone, but just because you showed up real. That's the fifth sign. You can't not speak truth, even when it costs you everything, even when it makes things awkward, even when it means standing alone. You'd rather be alone in alignment than surrounded in illusion. And that choice, again and again, is what makes your vibration untouchable. Demons don't fear loudness, they fear clarity, they fear coherence. They fear the one who no longer leaks energy, no longer negotiates with their shadow, no longer needs to win, because they already are. The sixth sign is that you've become immune to manipulation, not because you're cynical, but because you're clear. You don't get pulled into drama. You don't get seduced by empty promises. You don't fall for the performance, you feel for the vibration. And when something's off, you don't ignore it. You don't gaslight yourself. You trust your body. You trust your knowing. That's the thing demons hate the most. People who are no longer disconnected from their own inner authority. Because once you trust yourself fully, you stop being easy to control, you stop being predictable, and that's when you become dangerous, in the best way. And finally, the seventh sign. You're not afraid to be seen, not just the curated version of you, the whole you. You've made peace with your past, you've integrated your shadow, you've stopped hiding your battle scars. And because of that, your energy no longer carries shame, it carries transmission. You don't just walk into rooms, you change them. You don't just survive darkness, you alchemize it, and everything in the unseen world knows it. This is the break-heal vibration, and if you feel like I just described you, it's because I did. Why darkness can't touch you once you embody energetic sovereignty. There's a shift that happens, subtle at first, but irreversible, when you stop asking the world for permission to exist and start claiming your energy like sacred territory. That's the moment you cross the threshold from being spiritually curious to spiritually sovereign. And once you embody that sovereignty, darkness can no longer touch you the same way. It might still circle, it might still whisper, but it can't enter, because sovereignty is a vibration that seals your field. It's not about being perfect, it's about being claimed. You've claimed your light, your shadow, your story, your scars. You're no longer leaking your power through the cracks of unworthiness, fear, or self-doubt. You've patched those cracks with presence, with truth, with the kind of knowing that cannot be taught, it must be lived. Energetic sovereignty doesn't mean you never feel fear, it means fear no longer leads. You can feel it arise, and instead of reacting, you observe. Instead of spiraling, you anchor. That anchoring is everything. It's what demons, dark entities, even unconscious people with chaotic energy cannot stand. Because to them, your field used to be a playground. They could poke at your wounds, feed off your confusion, and manipulate your empathy. But now your energy is a fortress, not because you built walls, but because you built boundaries. And boundaries are not barriers, they are definitions. They define what is yours, what is not. What you allow and what you absolutely forbid. This is why the break-heal vibration is feared and respected, because it's not just about healing others, it's about being unshakably rooted in yourself. And when you're rooted, you become a disruptor of anything that thrives in distortion. You walk into a room and the air tightens, not because you're negative, but because your clarity instantly highlights where others are still hiding from themselves. People feel exposed in your presence, not judged, seen. And that's what makes some draw closer to you while others run from you. You've become a mirror too sharp for illusions to survive. But let's get real. This path isn't easy. Sovereignty comes with a price. You lose the ability to pretend. You lose the comfort of playing small. You lose the false safety of fitting in. And that grief, it's real. But what you gain is freedom. Not the kind that's loud and rebellious, the kind that's quiet and absolute, the kind that says, I know who I am, I know what I carry, and I will not abandon myself again. No matter who leaves, no matter who misunderstands, no matter what it costs. That's the moment the darkness stops chasing you, because it knows you can't be baited anymore. You've outgrown the game. Let me ask you something that most people never dare to face. What part of you still waits for external validation before you fully show up? What part of you still needs someone else to say, you're powerful, before you believe it yourself? That's the part where your sovereignty still leaks. And until you seal that, darkness will keep trying to enter through it. Not because you're weak, but because that's the only access point left. True energetic sovereignty means you don't wait to be chosen, you choose yourself. You don't wait for the light to arrive. You remember that you are it. And when you remember that, everything shifts. You begin to speak differently. You no longer entertain conversations that drain your spirit. You no longer explain your boundaries, you enforce them. You no longer chase after clarity, you embody it. And people notice, not because you're louder, but because your energy no longer asks for permission to take up space. It is the space. And that space becomes sacred, protected, not by force, but by frequency. Darkness can't dwell in high coherence. It glitches, it recoils, it looks for easier targets. This isn't about superiority, this is about responsibility. When you carry the break-heal vibration, you carry a responsibility to stay clean within yourself, to not use your power to dominate, but to liberate, to not manipulate with light, but to guide with truth. That's what makes it so rare. Many people want the power, but few are willing to become the vessel that can hold it without distortion. That's what you are learning to do. That's what you are doing right now, by listening, by remembering, by becoming the version of yourself that no longer lowers your frequency to be understood. So here's the deeper truth. Darkness fears and respects you not because you've eradicated it, but because you've integrated your own. You've made peace with your shadow. You've faced your own demons. You've walked through your own underworld and returned with sacred fire. That fire now lives in your eyes, in your voice, in your field. And it speaks louder than any affirmation ever could. It says, I know who I am. I know what I carry, and I do not negotiate with distortion. That's energetic sovereignty. That's why darkness cannot touch you. Because you've become the kind of light that knows its source and never forgets it. When you become the frequency that others can't fake, the curse and gift of being fully real. There's a quiet moment in your journey, one that doesn't come with fireworks or applause, when you realize something irreversible has happened inside you. You've crossed a line that you can't uncross. You've become real, not selectively, not occasionally, but fully and fundamentally. And once you do, the world around you doesn't respond the same way anymore, because your frequency has changed, and not just in intensity, but in truth. You become the kind of presence that others can't fake around. You become the kind of energy that makes masks fall off, even when people don't want them to. You become the mirror that reflects what's really there, and that is both a curse and a gift. The curse is this: people will project onto you. They will misunderstand you, resist you, and sometimes even resent you without knowing why. Because your energy bypasses surface-level interaction, it goes straight to the root. And not everyone is ready for that level of confrontation, not with you, but with themselves. Your silence will feel louder than others shouting. Your stillness will feel like pressure. Your presence alone will provoke dormant truths in other people. and some will thank you for it while others will try to fight you for making them feel exposed. It's not personal, it's energetic. You've become a frequency that doesn't allow pretending. And that's terrifying for those who haven't yet faced their own reflection. But the gift, the gift is something sacred. You start attracting people who are just as real, souls who don't flinch when truth walks in, people who don't want small talk, they want soul talk. People who don't want to be comforted into staying the same, they want to be activated into who they were always meant to be. And these connections, they're rare, but they're deep, they're eternal. Because when two people meet in their realness, time collapses. You don't meet as strangers, you meet as reminders. You remember each other before you even speak. But here's where it gets deeper. Being fully real means you stop managing how others see you. You no longer shapeshift to soothe egos or shrink to make others comfortable. You stop offering diluted versions of your truth just to keep the peace. Because you've realized that peace built on self-denial isn't peace, it's spiritual suffocation. And once you've tasted the freedom of full authenticity, you can't go back to choking on your own silence. You'd rather lose everything fake than betray even 1 ounce of what's real within you. Still, the path is lonely at times because there are fewer and fewer people you can do small with. You don't have the bandwidth for performative relationships, transactional dynamics, or shallow validation. You crave depth, honesty, energetic integrity, and until you find those soul-level matches, you spend a lot of time walking alone. But this solitude, it's not empty, it's sacred. It's where you refine your frequency, where you strengthen your discernment, where you become undiluted, because when the world stops rewarding your pretending, you start rewarding your truth, and that's when you become magnetic. Not to the masses, but to the aligned. Let me ask you something only the real ones will understand. How many times have you been told you're too intense, too deep, too much, just for being honest? That's because most people are used to comfort, not truth. Validation, not transformation. But your energy doesn't validate illusions, it breaks them. And that breaking isn't rejection, it's liberation. Every time someone walks away from you because they couldn't handle your honesty, they were never meant to walk beside you in the first place. Let them go. Your path requires allies, not audience. And here's the paradox of becoming real. You become softer and stronger. Softer because you no longer need to defend yourself. You're not performing, you're not proving, you're being. And stronger because your boundaries become rooted in self-respect, not fear. You no longer tolerate what doesn't align, not because you're angry, but because you're clear. You no longer chase love, you radiate it. And that love, that clarity, that realness, it heals rooms. It shifts timelines, it invites others to meet themselves in ways they never have before. But don't get it twisted, realness is not about being raw all the time, it's not about trauma dumping or being brutally honest without compassion. True realness is elegant, it's intentional, it's fierce and soft, direct and kind, grounded and expansive. It's knowing when to speak and when to stay silent, when to walk away and when to stay. It's not performative vulnerability, it's embodied integrity. And that kind of frequency, you can't fake it, you can't copy it. You become it. You become UF-ist. UNF-ist. That's why you're here. That's why you feel different. Because you're not meant to fit in, you're meant to awaken. You're meant to carry a vibration that others can feel in their bones, one that says, this is what it looks like to remember who you are. And yes, it'll scare some, but it will also save others. You've become the realist version of yourself, and in doing so, you've given others permission to do the same. This is the frequency that demons can't fake and angels recognize instantly. The unseen realm watches you, how spiritual entities react when a human becomes luminous. There's a moment in your spiritual evolution that shifts the very fabric of your relationship with reality. It's not loud, it doesn't come with fireworks, it's quiet, so quiet in fact that most people miss it. But in that silence, something irreversible occurs. Your light stops being theoretical and becomes tangible. Your aura becomes a living frequency, not just a concept. And in that moment, they notice the unseen realm, the spirits, the watchers, the ancient intelligences that exist beyond the veil. They see you. Not as a question mark, not as a seeker, but as a lighthouse. A luminous force in human form, and everything changes. When a human becomes luminous, you stop being invisible to the spirit world. You become a beacon, a signal, a vibration. You're no longer just navigating the spiritual world, you're affecting it. And that's when you realize this entire time, you weren't just walking through life unseen, you were being watched. Not in a creepy way, not in a paranoid way, but in a sacred way. The same way a seedling is watched by the sun, the same way a fire is watched by the wind, the unseen realm watches because they know something most humans forget. A human who remembers their power is one of the most potent forces in existence. When you become luminous, entities that once ignored you now take notice. Some feel drawn toward your radiance, others feel repelled, but all of them recognize the shift. Because now, instead of being food for vibrations of fear, confusion, and fragmentation, your energy becomes a kind of medicine. And medicine, by its very nature, is disruptive. It breaks illusions. It purifies fields. It calls everything into alignment, whether it wants to align or not. That's why some spirits will test you, not to harm you, but to measure you, to see if your light is stable or just another passing glow. And when they find stability, when they find coherence, when they find truth, they don't just respect you, they honor you. Because in the hierarchy of the unseen, coherence is king. But let's go deeper. Not all entities are benevolent, not all forces want you to rise. Some feed on fragmentation, some thrive in distortion, some are ancient programs that exist only to keep humans disempowered, distracted, divided. And when you become luminous, you don't just attract light, you attract attention. You become visible to forces that once ignored you because you weren't a threat. Now you are, not because you're aggressive, but because your clarity is contagious. Your field begins to liberate others without you even trying. You walk into a room and the spell breaks. People start remembering, start awakening, start feeling again, and that ripple, it terrifies anything that relies on stagnation to survive. But here's the mystery most people miss. Not all darkness is evil. Some is initiatory. Some of the entities that challenge you are not there to destroy you. They are there to refine you, to test your discernment, to sharpen your sovereignty, to ask you, are you really who you say you are when no one is watching? And when you rise, not with ego, but with embodiment, they step aside, they bow, because in the unseen realm, the real ones are recognized instantly, not by what they say, not by their rituals, but by the purity of their frequency. This is why your inner work matters more than ever, because the more luminous you become, the more precise you must be with your energy. Your thoughts become spells, your emotions become signals, your presence becomes a transmitter. You're no longer operating in isolation. You're now in communion with realms seen and unseen. And the more you embody your light, not perform it, but live it, the more you earn the respect of forces far beyond human comprehension. Some of them will start assisting you. You'll notice synchronicities, protection, guidance. You'll feel presences that aren't heavy but holy. You'll receive insights you didn't ask for but desperately needed. That's because the light recognizes its own, and when you embody it, you become part of a larger intelligence, a grid of awakened beings, both human and non-human, who are working to restore something ancient and sacred: remembrance. So, if you've ever felt eyes on you when no one is there, if you've ever felt a presence in your solitude that wasn't malicious but intentional, if you've ever heard a whisper in your intuition that felt older than this lifetime, you're not imagining it, you've been seen, you've become luminous. And now the unseen realm is watching, not to harm you, but to witness you rise. Is when a human becomes fully awake, fully real, fully sovereign. Even the stars pause to watch. Now let me ask you, are you ready to live like the whole universe is watching? Because it is, and it's waiting to see what you do with the light you've remembered.